Rays, you'd always see the queens of the hop. You'll see the finest ladies in the world there because he attracted him.
Dad would have 3 or 4 rooms in the Teresa Hotel where he would keep his girls. But anytime there would be a situation where he would be caught in the act or near the act or after the act, there would be violence that would be precipitated by that.
It was outrageous the way he would haul off and slap me if he thought that I disapproved or was getting ready to leave in any way. He was going to straighten me right out.
Dad came in the front door, threw the door open, and nailed my mom with a combination. I yelled, "Stop!" from the top of the stairs. And he looked up at me with the strangest face. You know, it was like pure shock and terror, and turned around and left.
We got into a heated argument, and he knocked me down. And I looked up at him and I said, "Does that make you feel like the champion now?"
All that punishment to his body, all that punishment to his psyche, all that punishment, he then had an opportunity to vent when he had a bad mood or when he felt pressured. At that moment in my father's life, what my father would do would be strike out.
He's very, very good to live with. He's kind, he's considerate, and he will never share a problem with you. If there's anything that worries him, he keeps it to himself. So times like that, he may be a little quiet, but he's wonderful to live with.
It's real interesting to know that here's a woman that constructed the whole story of Sugar Ray Robinson, who he was, the cavalier, gentleman boxer, you know, which I guess Dad was gentlemanly when he chose, but when it came to, you know, he was as down and dirty as anybody else.
He was one of the most mixed up individuals I've ever known. Psychiatrists would have had a field day with Ray. Dual personality. Ray would be charming, gracious, and 1 minute and the next minute have a stiletto in your back.
He danced for about a year or so until the novelty of seeing him wore off. He was not Fred Astaire.
While Ray was dancing, I think he was in Europe at the time, he learned that his businesses had really financially collapsed.
There were a lot of paradoxes about how Ray dealt with and felt about money. He was sloppy and neglectful about his own fortune that he amassed. He let his businesses run down. He got in trouble with the IRS over taxes. The collapse of his financial empire is what forced his compelling comeback.
It's common gossip when a fighter makes a return to the ring that he's broke, desperately in need of finances. Well, that's somewhat true. I need a buck as well as anyone else, I guess.
But at this stage, having been out almost 3 years and with only one tune-up fight, his timing wasn't down, his conditioning wasn't fully there.
It's strange to see Robinson take 2 hoping to land 1. We've never seen him do that.
He wasn't quite ready for a fighter such as Tiger Jones.
And at that point, even the close members of Ray's camp thought he was washed up, that he was through, that he'd never be able to regain the title again. Ray was not discouraged by the loss to Tiger Jones. Perhaps the fact that he needed the money pushed him on as well. And he did eventually succeed in obtaining a title fight with Bobo Olson, who had the middleweight title at the time.
How's the fight going to go? Well, I think the people will get a run for their money. See that? Always have when we fought.
Gonna go 15 rounds?
Won't go over that. All right, Bobo? Right.
Now at long range, Olsen's left goes to the head. He drives it right to the chin. And Olsen is down for right uppercut to the jaw. Olsen is down on his back. 3, 4, he's rolling on 5, 6, 7. It is going to be a knockout for Sugar Ray Robinson.
After knocking out Bobo Olson and regaining the title, Ray felt vindicated. The newspaper guys didn't think he would win. Nobody thought he could win. So on the way back to the dressing room, Ray Robinson, who was always in control of his emotions, actually broke down and cried.
There's a quirk in American hero worship that I think people love you more if you have been humbled once or twice, if you seem vulnerable, if you have a weakness. And I think the same thing is true of Robinson. After he lost a couple times, when he reached the level of being a mere mortal and not a god, then I think he became more and more popular.
Ray, let's have a big smile. Ah, boy, good smile.
In January of 1957, Robinson defended against Gene Fulmer. Very strong, powerful man, difficult to fight, awkward style.
We had the first fight scheduled for the first part of December in 1956, and he postponed it another month because he had a sore toe or a bad elbow or something.
Jab to the body.
Robinson lost a 15-round decision. And again, the sports obituaries were written. The return fight with Gene Fulmer 4 months later, I think, is probably one of Robinson's greatest moments in the ring.
First 5 rounds, I was ahead probably every round. He came back to the corner after the 4th round and said that he had had enough, that he was going to decide to quit, and they talked him into coming out one more round. And that one round was the end of me.
And a hard hook. Fulmer goes down. He's hurt. 2, 3. Fulmer's down. 4, 5, 6. I don't know whether he can get up. 7, 8. He's trying. 9. It's over.
Robinson was over in the other corner jumping up and down. I told my manager, how come Robinson's doing exercise between rounds? And he said, he's not doing exercise between rounds. He just won. He said they counted 10. That was the first time in my life that I'd ever been knocked out, and the last time.
At the age of 37, he was on top of the world, middleweight champion, once again.
The animosity started in 1952. Sugar Ray pulls up his entourage, and I said to my wife, wait, I want to go up and shake hands with him and meet him and introduce myself. I said, I'm Carmen Basilio. I just fought Billy Graham last week. He gave me a brush off. I was embarrassed. I felt about this big. I said, I'm going to fight that son of a bitch one of these days and kick his ass. Well, it didn't happen until 1957, but I got at him.
Sugar, what do you think will prove to be Carmen's weaknesses in this fight?
Well, I'll tell you, say, Carmen, would you mind telling me what's your weakness?
When we first started to negotiate for the first fight, he wanted 50% of the gate. He wanted me to take 10%. I said, no way. Finally, Robinson got 40%, and he gave me the 20%. He got twice as much.
Well, at this time, we're talking about the advent of theater television, closed-circuit television, and naturally this was a great new source of income. And, you know, Ray wanted a big chunk of that money, and as a result there were always negotiation problems.
One thing about this guy, he had guts. Now, in the 11th round, which was considered the round of the year, I hit him with, they say, 34 straight punches. I had him up against the ropes. And he come back that next round and kicked the hell out of me.
Although it was close, it was a split decision.
The winner and new middleweight champion of the world, Carmen Basilio.
He felt he defeated Basilio, and there were many people who agreed with him. So, of course, a rematch was in order to settle the issue, and that was scheduled for March 1958.
He hit me in the eyebrow in the 6th round. My eyelid blew up and closed. It looked like a great big plum. About the 14th round, one of my managers says, we think we're going to stop the fight, because I couldn't see. I said, if you stop this fight, you better be out of town before I get out of this ring. I said, you're not stopping this fight.
Robinson outpointed Basilio. Again, a very close split decision.
Any possibility that you may fight Carmen Basilio again? Well, it's hard to say at this point. There's a tax situation that has to be considered. and I have to follow the advice of my accountants and my consultants.
Around the time of the fights with Carmen Basilio, the IRS was putting tremendous pressure on Ray. In fact, the first fight, they took his whole purse, which was about $500,000.
Robinson and White, Pender and Black, and they collapse out on the apron.
By 1960, Robinson's marvelous skills had eroded terribly. He was nowhere near the fighter he used to be, but he was still a good fighter compared to everybody else. He also had a lot of problems financially, had a lot of problems emotionally. He'd met a woman in California, Millie, who would eventually become his wife. His marriage with Edna May was breaking up. He was going through a lot of turmoil.
When Dad and Mom got divorced, she came to me and she said, I want you to know that I love your dad, but I really don't want to take any more beatings, and I'm tired of his messing around.
Yeah, I missed him so much, and